It's February, which means that Alex and I are going to take a look at the top 10 best Canadian January transfers, and we are going to rate them in our tier list from S tier all the way down to D tier. Now, Alex, the January transfer window was obviously, or typically, less busy than the summer window, but we still saw plenty of moves. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk about all of them, but what did you make of all the Canadian movement so far you saw this window?
Yeah, overall, I'd say it was a pretty good window from a Canadian perspective because, like you mentioned, it can be tough to make big moves. Just, naturally, a lot of the, big moves that end up happening over the summer, when a lot of the major European leagues are out of season, that kind of dictates a lot of the market. But I think all things considered, there were some big transfers, which we don't always see in January. And then there was enough mid-level transfers like, oh, those are good moves for players. We have to remember that, on the men's case, this is a Copa America, summer. In the women's side, this is an Olympic year. And there's a few players as well that sneakily made good moves that will help their prospects of either making squads for those tournaments, and in the men's case, assuming they make that tournament, and in other cases, helping cement starting spots, helping cement minutes. And I think that's also kind of underrated because, of course, we all want the big moves. We want all the players to end up at all these, glitzy glamour. I'm sure we'd love 4 Canadians to move to Bayern, but that's not going to happen. And I thought there were some good moves that were of a good level.
Absolutely. So let's bring up the tier list. And I think there's only one player to start with. And I'm curious to see what you think. That's going to be Tajon Buchanan because he got a massive move. Now, his career so far has been intriguing to say the least, starting off obviously being in Major League Soccer, going over, taking his chance at Club Bruges, and now he's gotten a move to not only a top 5 league that Serie A is, but to a Champions League contender. And I think it's fair to say that considering they were in the Champions League final last season. The issue, which is where I think this makes for a fun debate, is, yes, it's a no-brainer, you take it, but he hasn't been on the pitch yet. And he probably won't be on the pitch for a couple more weeks. And I don't know what his minutes will look like for the rest of the season, but Inter Milan has always been a team where they need to get a big sell and hopefully find a hidden gem. And what I mean by that is they spent not a lot of money to bring in Tajon Buchanan. They probably, and he's been linked to leave for a while now, but Denzel Dumfries has been linked to the Premier League for probably about a 40 to 50 million euro range, which will give them a ton of money, will be an opening for the right wing back. So probably next season could be an opportunity for Buchanan to actually get significant minutes. But like Alex mentioned, as long as we qualify, there is a Copa America coming up, and one of our best players right now more than likely will not get a plenty of minutes before the end of the season. So Alex, taking a look at everything I just described there and the move itself, S tier down to D tier, where would you like to put this Buchanan transfer?
Yeah, that's a good question because when you lay it out like that, it's not as much of a no-brainer. Personally, I still go S tier just because I think at the end of the day, he is moving to a top 10 club on paper, genuinely, based on all that. And it's something where he's securing a long-term future. Like, I just like the long-term implications, the fact that they're signing a replacement early. He's literally learning on the job from the guy he's going to replace, which is a nice perk you don't always get. I think there's, of course, the perspective of you kind of lose that form from a Canadian perspective, and that might hurt him in the short term. I guess for what it's worth, just the positions he plays, like there is, I guess maybe I shouldn't mention him with how his situation's gone. You got Richie Larea, who's stepped up a lot in a Canadian shirt. You've got some options on the right who could step up. So I think because of that, this is enough of a net plus at the club level where I'd say it's still an S tier move. Like, this is a top move to a top club. This could set him up to be, for the next half decade plus, even if it's maybe a bit of short-term pain to get there.
Yeah, it's really a no-brainer. I was just trying to play both sides just to make sure, everyone knows the facts. But at the end of the day, he left Belgium and Club Brugge and went to Italy for Inter Milan. No-brainer. Yes, he may have to be a little bit patient, but at least there's an avenue there for him to earn his way to be maybe a starter, or at least more minutes next season. S tier for sure, massive move, and it's fantastic to see a Canadian like Tajon Buchanan go to a club like Inter Milan. But now we're going to go over to the women's side for our second player. You're going to see a bit of a trend here with Portland, because really this was the Canadian Portland window. There's a lot of love there on both the men's and women's side, and we're going to start with Jessie Fleming, who leaves Chelsea FC and joins the Portland Thorns. Alex, I don't think I've talked to you yet about this transfer. I think you're a fan, but what do you make of the move, and where do you want to put her in this tier list?
Yeah, Portland to rise up, right? It's
Here we go.
the second home, but Yeah, this is a bit of an interesting move because there's a lot of facets to it that I'm kind of like I'm excited about, and then I'm also like a bit on the fence about it. I think if we're going to start with the pluses, it's a move where she's going to go be a star, a Portland team that is surrounded with good weapons. Like I can just already imagine her in that midfield with Sam Coffey, feeding Sophia Smith. Like they just got so many options. Skeeta as well in the midfield. That could be a heck of a trio. You got Weaver. Like it's just such a deep attacking team, and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to be a legitimate contender. She has a chance to go be an MLS or an NWSL All-Star MVP level player for Portland. I think that's all huge because at Chelsea, it's one of the top clubs in Europe. She was unfortunately at the moment a secondary piece. Her minutes were kind of limited this year. It kind of stopped her ceiling from where she was able to go as a player. So I think on that front, I really like the move to Portland because I think she can genuinely go be a star in this league and dominate for the Portland Thorns. On the flip side, I do feel like she still has more to give in Europe. That's kind of the impression I have, where of course the NWSL is one of the top leagues in the world. So it's not like as if she's downgrading leagues. I just feel like based on what she showed in 21-22, where Chelsea kind of gave her the keys a lot, and they had such a great season. She had a lot of goals, a lot of assists. They won all sorts of trophies. She can be a very good player on a good European side. So because of that, you kind of read my mind. I'm kind of putting it in the B tier just because of the fact that I still think she leaves Europe with unfinished business. But at the same time, the NWSL has made some huge signings this year. Asasada Shawala just went to Bay FC. There's a lot of big stars going. So maybe this is just going to be a boon of a year for the league, and Jessie Fleming can be a part of that. And then in a year, we'll look back like, okay, that was an S tier move. But I feel like, man, even if she left Chelsea and went and starred for a club in Germany or starred for a club in Spain, maybe she helped Real Madrid try to contend and push Barcelona more. I think she would have had the potential to do that. But this Thorns move isn't a bad one either. We've seen a couple Canadians like a Jordan Hoytema leave Europe and really find her feet in NWSL, and Fleming can certainly do that with her talent.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I agree. I would maybe even be closer to an A than a C if you're making me, but I think B is fair. But it's mainly because to me, Jessie Fleming is the heartbeat of her national team, and I don't like the fact that she was a secondary piece, like you mentioned at Chelsea. I want her playing week in, week out, and continuing to grow her game, because I think she's going to have a huge role to play if Canada will do anything at this upcoming Olympics. And there's going to be a home right now for her in Portland, where she's also linking up with two other Canadians, in Christine Sinclair and, of course, Janine Becky, which is going to be great for her. I'm excited for that, and I think it's a good move. And at the very least, we know that she's going to play, and that is important. Our next player is a player that I was able to, luckily, be able to break the news, which excited me quite a bit. Theo Corbeanu permanently leaving Wolverhampton Wanderers and joining Granada in La Liga, which for me, Alex, I just want to place it first, and I want to see if you agree, and then we can talk about it. I'm gonna go B.
Interesting.
It's tough because we talked a little bit about it before, and what I liked is the fact that it's a permanent move, because Corbeanu has been on loan at 5 different clubs in the last couple of seasons. Back to back, 2 seasons in a row, he went on loan at 2 different clubs. So he's had a very difficult time to be able to go get the trust of a manager, play under the manager, and just basically keep his environment. I wanted to see him go to a top league, which is fantastic that La Liga is. But the issue that I see everyone saying is that they're in a relegation place. They could go down to the Segunda, and I'm okay with that. I really am. I know that you're not as crazy about him potentially having to spend next season in the second division, but I think just considering he was playing in Switzerland, he's got to find a home. He's got to start. I don't know how many minutes he'll get for the rest of the season. It was great seeing him come off the bench, but I'm okay with if they get relegated and he becomes a starter next season in the second division, and hopefully, they have a great campaign, get some confidence, gets a ton of minutes, and then they go back up to La Liga. And it's an added bonus. He gets 6 months of experience in the second best league in the world. Do you kind of agree, or would you maybe bump it up to A?
Yeah, I'm kind of. I'd probably just leave it in B, just because it really depends what kind of view you take of it. I think short-term view is excellent. He's in La Liga. He's in a tier. To use a John Herdman-ism, he's a tier 1 player, right? He's in a top 5 league. playing in that environment. He's already seen the field, right? Like he signed the deal. Next, he's already on the field getting his debut. So there's no questions of is he going to get minutes? He is going to get minutes. So I think on all that factor, it's huge. It's just the long-term aspect of this move of if they go down, right? Because there's strong possibility they go down. They're currently in like 19th, and there's like a 5-6 point gap that's hard to make up. Especially they dropped, they drew on the weekend. That sort of result's not going to help you. You need points earlier, sooner than later. And I just think I look at Corbeanu. It's been a bit of a tumultuous time the last few years, just because every time he seemed to find a footing somewhere, he's been loaned, but then also sometimes he hasn't found his footing at places like maybe at Arminia Bielefeld. We expected a bit more, and he didn't find his feet. But ultimately, I look at what he has done. He showed in the championship that he can be a dangerous winger on his day, and that's a top level. That's some people argue it's better than the Segunda division. He's shown that he can do it there. And I think this most recent loan where he went to Switzerland, he really showed well. A goal, 5 assists, and all of his chance creation numbers were like top tier in that league. And the Swiss league, okay, maybe the overall quality might push it down amongst some other European leagues, but it's still a very good league at producing attacking talent. You can go for days through the likes of Mo Salah and all these guys that have gone through the league in the past. So I was very intrigued by the fact that Corbeanu was at the top of a lot of attacking metrics in that league on top of his numbers. Because of that, I feel like if he goes down and gets relegated and ends up starting in Segunda, it's not bad, like you mentioned. It's like it'll be some stability, especially if he can stick at the club, get minutes. But I just do feel like he could be at a slightly higher level than that long term. So I think that's something where, again, like you mentioned, long term, it's not bad for him. But I just think personally, if they go down, he's shown that he can potentially play at a higher level. But also the one thing that we haven't really seen in his game, and this is both in terms of him actually having a home, is consistency. He hasn't been anywhere very long, or at some places he hasn't had a chance to put consistent 90-minute games and output. It sometimes can be streaky, and maybe if this move brings him that, then it will be the benefit. So I think B is very fair because of all those added risks we just weighed. Yeah,
without the relegation risk, I mean, it might even be an S tier, right? Like it just would. It's a massive move. It's a great step for him. I wish him the best, and hopefully, they can find a way to stay in La Liga and he gets a chance to play next season. But regardless, I think it's a safe move, and Alex and I both agreed on B. So we're doing pretty good so far agreeing. The next player is Lucas Cavallini, who left Cholos to return to his former club, Puebla. He's already having a pretty decent start, 2 goals in this season so far. He looks a little bit more confident. He's 31. I don't think his time is quite done with the national team. I think this is a great move for him because his time at Cholos was not very good, and he's going back to a familiar environment. He's already scoring. He's already doing better than he did at Cholos. So I don't know what other leagues he could have potentially looked at. I really like it. I'd be close to just, at his current form right now and what's left in the tank for Cavallini, I think he's at the exact place he needs to be. So I'd be looking towards, that B to A. What are your thoughts on Cava?
Yeah, I think for Cavallini personally, this is an A tier move because ultimately he needed minutes. He goes to a club he's familiar with, the league he's familiar with. He's already scoring goals at a good rate. He was beloved in Puebla when he left. They were sad to see him go up to the Whitecaps, of course, as it was on that move. I'm surprised he didn't end up back in MLS, personally. I just wondered if maybe he'd want to be close to home. But he's had success in Liga MX, and Liga MX is a strong league. We can all talk all day about the comparisons between Liga MX and MLS, but Liga MX has shown that it's still a very, very, very good league that is, above MLS in a lot of regards. So I think for Cavallini personally, it's a good move. It remains to see what this means for his place in the Canada striker tier list, just because, again, we'll talk about one of the other options. What's going on with Ike Ugbo? Heck, Theo has been making quite a name for himself in that race. You kind of wonder, okay, where does Cavallini stack up regarding to those people? And that's a whole other discussion. But if you're breaking down Cavallini personally, it seems he got this move nailed on, even if it was a bit of one that people didn't expect for him to go back to Puebla, to stay in Mexico, to keep sticking it out. And respect for staying in a tougher environment like that and giving a crack.
Absolutely. And for me, I'm so glad I didn't see him go back to Major League Soccer. I thought he had some of his worst seasons there, and I thought he had some of his best in his career in Mexico, so I'm very excited to see him there. Alex, we got 3 players that we're going to hit back to back to back. It's because they all went to the same club. We talked about Jessie Fleming going to Portland with the Thorns. Well, now we have 3 Canadians who joined up with Zach McGraw already at the Thorns, or at the Timbers, and there could be a 5th player in Sean Ray, which we He's on trial right now, but the 3 that are confirmed to be joining up in Portland with Zach McGraw, I'm gonna place them first just so we can get the visual there. We have Maxime Crépeau. I'm just gonna we can move them around to be the starting keeper. Another keeper joined to be the backup, James Pantemis, and then Kamal Miller leaves Inter Miami and Messi to join up with the Timbers. I'm torn a little bit. I don't know where. Let's start with Crépeau. Alex, he leaves LAFC. I know that a lot of Canadian fans would have liked to see him try Europe. I never really felt like that was an option. I don't know if he's the exact profile from the European game. Maybe I'm wrong there. Let me know if you disagree. I feel like he was just at his age, just the way that Crépeau plays, MLS was always probably going to be the destination. He goes to a good club like the Timbers that are, looking to turn a corner. I'm not crazy about leaving LA for Portland, but I do think that they'll be more competitive this year. It's kind of up in the air. I'm really torn on where to put Crépeau. Honestly, all 3 of the Timbers players. So, Alex, take it away with Crépeau. Where do you want to see him go?
I personally just put him C tier. Because I think, again, it's one where he's going to go be a starter. That's of course main option. He's in a league that he's very familiar with. It's one of those where it's surprising. It's genuinely surprising because over the last, I think, 5 years, he's been one of the best MLS goalkeepers among stats across 5 years, where he's at different clubs, went through an injury, etc. Despite all that, he was still one of the best in the league ever since he's come into the league with the Whitecaps, and he won an MLS Cup in LAFC. I get the one where, okay, maybe it just didn't make sense to go to Europe, especially at this time of the year, but ultimately he was a free agent. And I just think if there's a way to do it, being a free agent helps. You just go and test yourself. But of course, he's got a young family. He's also at an age where you want a bit of stability. So I'm not blaming him for doing that either. I just think if he were to stick in MLS, I was surprised that the Timbers were the landing spot. Because again, this is one of the top goalkeepers in the league. This was someone that was at LAFC. I felt like he would have ended up at another contender, whereas I think Portland has the tools to be very dangerous this year, but this is still a club rebuilding. Phil Neville is in his first year on the job there. Like, this is a club that for them this year, making the playoffs is a goal, whereas I feel like Crépeau, he showed he can be the guy on a contender. So I was a bit surprised from that perspective in MLS. So I'll just go C because I just wasn't expecting. I would have expected maybe to throw a name out there. It doesn't make sense because they already have a goalie, but one of those teams near the top, like a Cincy style team, right? Like, I genuinely think he could have been more of a final piece on those kinds of teams. But hey, if he turns Portland around, then that's a whole other story.
Well, that's the interesting debate. Like I said, I never really thought he was going to go to Europe. I never crossed my mind. I didn't think that was an option. I heard, and you've heard this too, that Phil Neville was well liked in the Canadian dressing room. Clearly, he recruited 3 players, so maybe it's less surprising than we think. James Pantemis, I put in a C tier. Just he's going from backup to backup. It's fine. Is there anything you want to add with Pantemis?
I'd just say he's either C or B, just because it would have been a B before the Crépeau news dropped, because we kind of wondered, would he go to CPL and maybe just be the guy there, because he'd done it before with Valor. But then he signed with an MLS team, and Portland has an opening. They do need a bit of an upgrade in goal. You're excited, like Pantemis is going to get minutes, and now Crépeau is going to come in. And the thing is, too, it's almost like you could argue that because of that, almost pushes it down to a D, because for Pantemis, Crépeau is like a number 1 goalkeeper. This is a guy who's going to eat up a lot of minutes in the net. Of course, he might go to the national team, and that'll open up times where Pantemis will get to start, but this isn't one where you're getting a 1A, 1B situation. It's a very much a 1 and 2 situation. And I think for Pantemis, if you were to stay in MLS, you would have liked him to get a 1A, 1B at the very least, because then you wonder, okay, maybe would it have been better to go start in a CPL or go even start in a USL or try your luck somewhere else. So I'd say C is kind of fair because of those permutations. Yeah,
he was already a backup keeper. That's why I kept him in C. And if, like you mentioned, if he would have went somewhere with more minutes in the same league, then we could have maybe talked about it. But now we have Kamal Miller, who I didn't really think was going to leave Inter Miami, because why would you want to leave Messi and friends? But again, maybe it's Phil Neville. He's got the calling card for these Canadian players. Kamal Miller will go there and play a ton of minutes. We know that for sure. He'll be more than likely playing in a back four, which I think he looked pretty comfortable doing at Inter Miami. He could maybe even partner up with Zach McGraw. Again, almost similar to Crépeau, I didn't think that he would go to Europe. Again, this is just not that anything I've heard. It's just kind of reading what this players have done, making your own kind of decision from there. I didn't think that Crépeau or Miller would be Europe guys this window. That's just what I think. Alex, again, let me know if you disagree. So I always thought if he would move, it would be a landing spot within Major League Soccer. He's going somewhere where he's going to play a ton and be an important player, but you could argue he was already an important player at Inter Miami with, again, Messi and friends. So, I mean, B to C is probably where I'm looking. What do you think, Alex?
I'm going D. I think
you're going D. You're going right down.
Because look, I think it's something where for Kamal Miller, look, I'll preface by saying I agree. It's a good move for him in isolation. Like he's going to be the guy at the Timbers. He's going to be a huge piece. I could see him really stepping up as a leader. Being one of the best center backs in MLS as he's already been. So I think it's a win on those fronts. But I think in the bigger picture, it's kind of one where Kamal Miller kind of got hosed in the fact that he was already one of those guys in Montreal, right? Like he was an MLS All-Star at Montreal. He gets traded to Miami. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He becomes a fan favorite in Miami. There's this talk. So, maybe he's also said it publicly. I want to go try Europe. He's a free agent at the end of 2023. Like, okay, maybe he tests that out, but he loves Miami so much. He's a guy there. He's a huge piece they need just because they play so on the front foot. He's helping, have a bit of stability defensively, and he fits into their style of building out from the back and all that. He signs a long-term deal. He loves it there. And, he's playing with Messi, Busquets, Alba. They're winning some silverware. He first came into MLS in Florida, so he's obviously got some connections there. And then all of a sudden it's just pulled out from under you and you're in Portland and you've just signed a long-term deal with Miami. I think because of all of that, it's a D, because ultimately, if you were going to stay in MLS, it would have been nicer if he had the choice as a free agent, because I think there's a free agent. He would have got some good money thrown at him from different teams. Would have loved to make him a centerpiece of their back line. I can think, for example, there's a lot of teams that would want a center back. Like the Whitecaps could have loved to get a Canadian center back to build around on the back. Instead, he gets traded, and the fact that he just signed a long-term deal in Miami, I would have preferred for him to, especially in Miami, you get the exposure, you get the chance to play with the top talent. I think because of that, it's a D. I think it's one where, look, it's not a bad move for Miller, but I just think all things considered, he kind of did get hosed in the long run, considering where things were trending with him being a free agent and him being in Montreal just a year ago and all of that. So it's kind of tough.
I get where you're coming from. The only argument I would say to even maybe keep it around C is the fact that because there's the exposure and because Messi and friends are going to get so much attention, going to make the team want to put more money in, there could be a reality that if he even stayed at Inter Miami, that they splashed the cash and brought in different center backs, and maybe we're going to try to push him out anyways, or at least to be like a backup, you know what I mean? So you could argue that if that was happening, whether it happened right now or maybe even a year from now, because I don't think Inter Miami are going to stop investing as long as Messi and friends are there. So going to the Timbers, he's going to play 90 minutes every single week. Do you get that argument, or to even keep him in C, maybe bump James down a little bit, or do you have to see Kamal in D?
I just think the factor that he was going to be a free agent, no strings attached, as a center back that could open up the doors for him to go to Europe. Like a dream, he said. I think it was at training camp last year with Montreal. They asked him, would you want to go to Europe? Said, absolutely. I think the fact that he would have been a free agent and then re-signed with Miami, I think there's something where, from Miami's perspective too, if they weren't satisfied with them, they wouldn't have offered him a good deal like they did. Of course, then we could argue then why the heck did they trade him a few months later, but that's the nature of MLS, right? You can get away with that sort of stuff. So I don't know. That's the one factor. If he was maybe locked into a 2 or 3 year deal, he kind of saw the writing on the wall in Miami, he moved. Maybe it's a different scenario, but the fact he would have been a free agent would open up doors in MLS, in Europe, and all of that. I think that's the part that kind of sticks with me here.
All right. Well, I want someone in D. So, you left Messi and friends. It's an L, it's fair. I would say, again, even my argument just would have been the fact that, he's guaranteed to play, which is great, but it's tough. We'll stick with the men and we'll go to Ike Ugbo, who we mentioned earlier, who left Cardiff, where he had a pretty hot start and then has basically completely fallen out of form. He's now been loaned out to Sheffield Wednesday. He has played, he has started, he has not scored, but at least it's a better circumstance than at Cardiff, although they are still down in a relegation battle. He is on loan. There's no guarantee that he will stay there. And like I said, even though he's playing, they just don't look like a team that I'd be surprised if they ended up staying up, just the way that they're playing right now. And it also surprised me if Ugbo keeps his place in the starting 11 if he isn't able to start finding the back of the net. So I think there's a lot of ifs coming up, although it's better than Cardiff. So I'm immediately looking at C, just because I think the situation can change. I think it's bright. At this very moment, it's bright. He's starting. He's just not scoring. And I don't know how long in a relegation battle, until he starts finding the back of the net and can prove that he deserves to be in the starting 11, I could totally see him fall out of form. He is a striker that's very streaky. When he's on, he's on. And when he's not, you saw what happened at Cardiff. So it's better than Cardiff, but it's not great. I would say C.
Yeah, I'd say probably C, borderline D, but I think there's arguments to be made for C. Just because also, again, with Ugbo, it's good that he's getting minutes. I think that's most important. And, Sheffield Wednesday needs him, and that's good that he's going to have a vital role to play. But it's just also wild to contend that just 2 years ago, he was lighting it up for Troyes and Ligue 1. Like, he looked like he was, looked like someone who could be in top 5 leagues. He was scoring against PSG. And for him now to be on a championship club that's battling relegation, it just feels like, again, like there's more to give there with Ugbo. But also, like you mentioned, he wasn't getting the minutes at Cardiff. He kind of fell out of favor. He also had an injury right when he was starting to find form again. So it's just the situation wasn't working out. So ultimately, he's going to get minutes. It is a loan, so like it's something where if they go down, I can't imagine he'll be there next year. But I agree, it is something where it's a C. This is a player that it feels like when all things are going right for him, he could be in a top 5 league right now. Because of that, it kind of feels like a C tier transfer.
All right, we have 2 more players, 2 women we're going to talk about. The first one is Nichelle Prince, who after 7 seasons with the Houston Dash have joined Kansas City Current. I don't think I've talked to you too much about this transfer, Alex. She was obviously a fan favorite, had a fantastic career so far with the Dash, and now she's making the move, staying in the NWSL. So I'm looking at B, just right away. Like I like the move. Curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to say B. I think it's something where it's overall like there's a lot of pluses, a lot of downsides. I think the downside was she was at Houston for so long. Like you mentioned, she was very well beloved, a key piece there, and just to kind of get traded out of nowhere, it sounded like it was a bit of a surprise to her. It's kind of, it's within a league, you're kind of like, well, you kind of feel for the player. For what it's worth, it's not like she's going from a contender to a team that finished last. Like they both finished similarly close last year. Did Kansas City and Houston. So it is similar environments, and Kansas City has made some interesting signings. They were supposed to be a lot better last year than they were, if not for injuries. So maybe there's a chance for Prince to be a star, and I think that's the positive to look at. That, okay, you're looking at the environment Prince is heading into. I have a lot of optimism about this KC team. They just moved into that brand new stadium, the first women-specific, soccer-specific stadium. I think they're saying in the world, at least it very much is in America. Just to fact check myself on that one. But that's huge. They made some huge signings last year that are going to be healthy. So hopefully Prince can really slot in and show that why she's been such a solid NWSL forward over the last few years with the Dash. So it's obviously tough to leave the Dash, but overall, I think she ended up in a pretty good landing spot.
I agree. She's in great form right now with the national team, so I want to see her playing. I want to see her continue in a league that she's comfortable with. I really like this move, which leaves our final player, Shalina Zadorsky, who is leaving Tottenham and going on loan at West Ham United. Now she's 31. She has not had a ton of minutes with the Spurs this season. And with the Olympics coming up, I think this is a slam dunk. She gets to stay, again, in a league she's comfortable with. She's going to hopefully go and get significant minutes with West Ham. And I think she's going to an overall better situation. I like pretty much everything about this move, and I'm thinking I'm going to put her right beside Cavallini in A, unless you disagree and for some reason want to maybe drop her down a bit.
Yeah, I'd say A or even S, you could argue in this scenario, just because Zadorsky, for whatever reason, she was the captain of Tottenham, and she just completely fell out of favor. And, Tottenham struggled this year. It was tough for Zadorsky as well, because she was coming off a tough last season. Of course, she had some health conditions and wasn't able to play, and it was great. She was able to return and get back out on the field. And it felt like Tottenham were kind of missing out on her. And I think it's kind of telling the fact she's gone on loan to West Ham, where her old Tottenham coach is, from before when she was, the captain and a key piece. And she's already found minutes. West Ham, just beat Arsenal this past weekend. That's a huge win for them as they they try to get out of relegation while also scuppering, Arsenal's title race. Like, it already shows that Zadorsky is picked a good environment. She can really be a good WSL player. So I would put A for that one, borderline even S, because if it gets her these minutes in an Olympic year, I'll help her compete with Buchanan and Gilles and Rose. It's in what's going to be a very competitive race for the 3 center back spots at the Olympics.
Absolutely, Alex. We did pretty good on agreeing. I think Kamal Miller was our bigger debate, but I ended up caving because I needed someone in the D tier. And when you leave Messi, it's only fair. So if you enjoyed this video, guys, let us know down below. Also, let us know what you think on this list. If you agree, what changes you would make. And as always, be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and we'll see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.